As we begin a new year, I want to send my sincere wishes of peace and happiness to everyone watching this channel. Today's video is a special one. We're taking a look at where the cast of The Passion of the Christ are now, in 2026, as followers of Christ. We continue to care deeply about the people who helped bring the story of Jesus closer to the world through this powerful film. Let's begin. Jim Caviezel, Jesus Christ. When audiences think of The Passion of the Christ, the first face that comes to mind is almost always Jim Caviezel. More than 2 decades later, that association has never faded. Playing Jesus did not simply become a role on his resume. It became a defining mark on his life, career, and public identity. Jim Caviezel has always spoken openly about his Catholic faith. But after The Passion of the Christ, that faith moved from private conviction into public witness. He has often described the film as a spiritual turning point rather than a professional achievement. Caviezel is married and lives a relatively quiet family life, far from the traditional Hollywood spotlight. Together with his wife, he adopted children with special needs, a decision he has linked directly to his religious values and understanding of service. Daily faith practices, prayer, church attendance, and speaking at faith-based events remains central to his life. Unlike many actors who separate belief from career, Caviezel has consistently framed his work as an extension of his moral responsibility, even when that stance limited mainstream opportunities. Professionally, Caviezel's path after 2004 was unconventional. While the film made him instantly recognizable worldwide, it also placed him in a category few actors occupy, permanently identified with a sacred figure. Rather than pursuing romantic leads or blockbuster franchises, he gravitated toward roles emphasizing moral conflict, justice, and sacrifice. His most sustained success came through television, particularly with Person of Interest, where he portrayed a character driven by conscience and restraint, qualities audiences already associated with him. Over the years, he also appeared in independent films, historical dramas, and action projects, often favoring stories with ethical or redemptive themes. By 2026, Jim Caviezel is no longer chasing fame, nor is he attempting to redefine his public image. Instead, he occupies a rare position, an actor whose legacy is already fixed. Whether or not he appears in future biblical projects, his portrayal of Jesus remains definitive for millions of viewers around the world. In 2026, Caviezel continues to act selectively, participate in faith-based speaking engagements, and live a life oriented around family and belief rather than industry momentum. His career may not follow a traditional upward arc, but his influence endures, quietly, persistently, and deeply rooted in the role that changed everything. Maia Morgenstern, Mary, Mother of Jesus. Among all performances in The Passion of the Christ, few are remembered with as much quiet reverence as the portrayal of Mary by Maia Morgenstern. Her performance was restrained, almost wordless at times, yet emotionally overwhelming. For many viewers, she embodied grief, endurance, and dignity without theatrics, an interpretation that lingered long after the film ended. Maia Morgenstern was born in Romania into a Jewish family, a fact that added unexpected depth to her casting as Mary. Rather than approaching the role through doctrine, she has often described her work as an exploration of universal motherhood, loss, and human suffering. This perspective resonated across religious boundaries and helped her performance transcend a single faith tradition. In her private life, Morgenstern is known for being deeply family-oriented. She is a mother and has spoken about how motherhood shaped her emotional understanding of Mary's pain in the film. Her daily life is grounded, intellectual, and culturally engaged, centered far more on art and education than celebrity culture. Before 2004, Morgenstern was already one of the most respected actresses in Eastern Europe, with a strong background in theater, classical performance, and film. The Passion of the Christ did not redefine her career. It internationalized her recognition. After the film's release, she made a deliberate choice not to pursue Hollywood. Instead, she returned to Romania, where she continued working in theater, television, and film, often in complex dramatic roles. Over time, she became not just an actress but a cultural leader. She has served as the director of the State Jewish Theater in Bucharest, balancing artistic excellence with historical memory and cultural preservation. Unlike many actors tied to a globally famous film, Morgenstern rarely revisits The Passion in interviews unless asked. When she does, her reflections are calm and thoughtful, She frames the project as one meaningful chapter in a long artistic journey, not as its defining moment. Her influence today is felt most strongly in Europe, where she is regarded as a serious artist rather than a celebrity figure. She regularly appears at cultural festivals, academic events, and theatrical productions, often engaging with themes of identity, history, and collective memory. By 2026, Maia Morgenstern stands as a figure of artistic longevity. She continues to work in theater and film, mentor younger performers, and contribute to cultural institutions. Her life is not centered on the global film industry, but on sustaining meaningful artistic work within her community. For audiences revisiting the Passion of the Christ decades later, Morgenstern's Mary remains timeless. In 2026, she is not chasing relevance. She has already earned it. Her portrayal endures because it was never designed to impress, only to tell the truth of grief, love, and faith through human presence alone. Monica Bellucci. Mary Magdalene. When Monica Bellucci appeared in The Passion of the Christ as Mary Magdalene, audiences encountered a version of the character that was raw, grounded, and unmistakably human. Unlike many earlier portrayals that leaned towards symbolism, Bellucci's Magdalene felt emotionally exposed, marked by fear, devotion, and a deep sense of personal transformation. Monica Bellucci has never framed herself as a religious spokesperson, yet she has often spoken about spirituality in reflective, philosophical terms. She approaches faith less as doctrine and more as lived experience, suffering, forgiveness, and resilience. This perspective shaped her performance, allowing her to portray Mary Magdalene not as an abstract figure, but as a woman who had been broken and rebuilt by grace. In her personal life, Bellucci is known for valuing privacy, family, and balance. She is a mother, and motherhood has become increasingly central to how she speaks about identity, time, and purpose. Rather than chasing constant visibility, she has gradually shifted towards selective work that aligns with her stage of life and artistic interests. Unlike many cast members, Bellucci entered The Passion of the Christ already established as an international star. Her career spans Italian cinema, French films, Hollywood productions, and auteur-driven European projects. The film did not redefine her trajectory, but it added a serious, spiritually weighty role to a career often associated with glamour. In the years following 2004, Bellucci continued to work steadily, appearing in dramas, thrillers, and major studio films. As she matured, her roles evolved, moving away from romanticized archetypes toward complex, emotionally layered women. This shift reflected both her personal growth and her refusal to be confined by early career labels. What sets Bellucci apart is longevity. She has navigated decades in an industry often hostile to aging actresses, maintaining relevance without reinvention gimmicks. Her credibility rests on consistency rather than controversy. Although The Passion of the Christ is not the most frequently cited title in discussions of her career, it remains one of her most emotionally intense performances. Viewers who revisit the film often notice how restrained her acting is, how much is communicated through silence, posture, and expression rather than dialogue. By 2026, Monica Bellucci occupies a rare position in global cinema, respected, selective, and unconcerned with trends. She continues to work primarily in European film, choosing projects that offer artistic depth over mass exposure. Her public appearances are fewer but more intentional, often connected to film festivals, cultural events, or meaningful collaborations. In the context of The Passion of the Christ, Bellucci's Mary Magdalene remains a study in dignity and vulnerability. In 2026, her life reflects the same qualities, measured, reflective, and grounded in experience. She is no longer defined by any single role. Yet her contribution to this film remains an essential part of its emotional power. Christo Jivkov, John the Apostle. In The Passion of the Christ, the Apostle John stands as the figure of loyalty, the disciple who does not flee, who remains present in suffering, and who bears witness when others collapse under fear. That emotional responsibility fell to Hristo Shopov, whose performance gave John a quiet strength that balanced the film's brutality. Unlike some of his co-stars, Christo Jivkov lived largely outside the orbit of international celebrity. He was known among colleagues as thoughtful, disciplined, and private, rather than cultivating a public persona. Jivkov focused on his craft and his personal convictions, which were shaped by European cultural traditions rather than public declarations of faith. Those who worked with him often described him as introspective, someone who approached roles from an internal, emotional place rather than external display. This quality made him especially effective as John, a character defined not by speeches, but by presence. Following the global exposure of the Passion of the Christ, Jivkov continued working primarily in European cinema and television. He did not pursue a Hollywood career, nor did he attempt to capitalize on the film's international fame in a commercial way. Instead, he remained committed to projects that allowed him to explore complex human emotions and historical narratives. Within Eastern European film circles, he was regarded as a serious actor, one whose reputation rested on reliability and emotional authenticity rather than star power. The Passion became his most internationally recognized work, but not his sole artistic identity. Christo Jivkov passed away in 2023 at the age of 48 after a battle with cancer. His death was met with tributes from colleagues and faith-based audiences alike, many of whom remembered him first and foremost as John, the disciple who stayed, for viewers revisiting the Passion of the Christ years later. This knowledge adds a layer of poignancy. Jivkov's performance captures endurance in the face of suffering, and his early passing has made that portrayal feel even more fragile and human. By 2026, Hristo Jivkov's life belongs to memory rather than present-day headlines. Yet his contribution to the Passion of the Christ remains intact and undiminished. In a film defined by extremes, violence, pain, sacrifice, his John provided moral stability. He was the witness, the companion, the silent bearer of grief. In the context of a new generation discovering the film, Jivkov's performance continues to resonate because it does not rely on spectacle. It relies on faithfulness. And in that sense, his legacy mirrors the very character he portrayed, present, unwavering, and remembered not for what he said, but for the fact that he stayed. Francesco DeVito. Peter the Apostle in the Passion of the Christ. Peter is portrayed not as a distant saint, but as a deeply human figure, impulsive, loyal, fearful, and ultimately broken by his own denial. That complexity was brought to life by Francesco DeVito, whose performance gave Peter a raw emotional arc that many viewers found painfully relatable. Francesco DeVito has always maintained a relatively private personal life. Unlike some of his co-stars, he has not positioned himself as a public figure defined by religious commentary or ideological statements. Instead, he approaches faith, morality, and meaning through the lens of character and story rather than public declaration. Colleagues often describe DeVito as disciplined and grounded, an actor shaped by classical training and professional rigor rather than celebrity culture. His daily life remains rooted in routine, family, and work, reflecting a preference for stability over visibility. After the Passion of the Christ brought him global exposure, DeVito continued working steadily, primarily within European cinema, television, and theater. Rather than pursuing a Hollywood breakthrough, he built a career as a reliable character actor, appearing in historical dramas, crime series, and stage productions that demanded emotional realism. His resume reflects consistency more than spectacle. While The Passion remains his most internationally recognized role, it did not define the limits of his career. Instead, it became one of several serious performances that established him as an actor capable of portraying inner conflict and moral struggle. Portraying Peter is a unique challenge. The character embodies contradiction, fierce devotion followed by devastating fear. DeVito's performance captured this tension without exaggeration. His denial scenes remain some of the most emotionally restrained yet painful moments in the film. Less about words, more about shame and self-recognition. For DeVito, this role did not result in typecasting, but it did associate him with one of the most psychologically complex figures in Christian history. Audiences who revisit the film often note how his Peter feels disturbingly modern, a man undone not by evil intent, but by weakness. By 2026, Francesco DeVito continues to work as a professional actor, largely outside the glare of international media. His career reflects endurance rather than reinvention. He remains active, respected within industry circles, and connected to projects that value performance over fame. In the long view of the Passion of the Christ, DeVito's Peter stands as a reminder that sanctity is not born from perfection. In 2026, his life mirrors that message: quiet, imperfect, and steady. He may not dominate headlines, but his work continues to speak for itself. Much like the disciple he portrayed, flawed, faithful, and deeply human. Luca Lionello, Judas Iscariot, Among all the roles in the Passion of the Christ, none carried a heavier emotional burden than Judas Iscariot. The character is forever associated with betrayal, guilt, and despair. Bringing that weight to the screen required an actor willing to be misunderstood. And Luca Lionello accepted that responsibility fully. Luca Lionello has often described himself as a private individual, cautious about public exposure. Early in his life, he distanced himself from faith, identifying as an atheist for many years. However, his experience working on the Passion of the Christ marked a profound personal turning point. Lionello later spoke openly about returning to the Catholic faith, crediting the role and the environment surrounding the production with reshaping his spiritual outlook. This transformation was not immediate or performative. It unfolded gradually, influencing how he approached life, work, and meaning. By the time he began speaking publicly about it, Lionello framed the change not as ideology, but as reconciliation, both with belief and with himself, professionally. Lionello continued working steadily in Italian cinema, television, and theater. Unlike some actors who seek to escape a controversial role, he never disowned Judas. Instead, he treated the performance as a serious artistic contribution, one that explored moral collapse rather than caricature. While The Passion remains his most internationally recognized role, Lionello's career includes a wide range of characters, from historical figures to modern dramatic roles. He has built a reputation as a dependable character actor, someone trusted to handle psychologically demanding material with restraint and depth. Playing Judas comes with a unique cost. Audiences rarely separate the actor from the act of betrayal. For years after the film's release, Lionello was publicly associated with one of the most despised figures in Christian tradition. Yet his portrayal avoided sensationalism. His Judas is tormented, pursued by guilt, and visibly unraveling, less a villain than a tragic figure crushed by his own choices. This interpretation has endured. Viewers revisiting the film decades later often comment on how human his Judas feels, especially in contrast to more one-dimensional portrayals in earlier biblical cinema. By 2026, Luca Lionello continues to live and work quietly, grounded in family life, faith, and craft. He is no longer defined by controversy, nor does he seek to reshape his public image. His career reflects maturity, selective roles, consistent work, and a clear sense of purpose. In the broader legacy of the Passion of the Christ, Lionello's Judas stands as one of the film's most unsettling achievements. In 2026, his life reflects the same lesson embedded in that performance. That failure, when confronted honestly, does not have to be the final word. Hristo Shopov, Pontius Pilate, in The Passion of the Christ. Pontius Pilate is not portrayed as a simple villain, but as a man trapped between conscience and power. That moral tension was carried by Hristo Shopov, whose performance gave Pilate a cold restraint layered with visible internal conflict. Hristo Shopov has long maintained a private personal life, shaped by Eastern European cultural and historical realities rather than Hollywood norms. He is known as a serious, intellectually inclined actor, someone who approaches roles through historical context and psychological realism rather than emotional excess. Shopov has rarely spoken about faith in doctrinal terms. Instead, he frames belief, ethics, and responsibility as questions of human behavior under pressure. This worldview aligned naturally with the character of Pilate, a bureaucrat navigating political survival in an unstable environment. Before the Passion of the Christ, Shopov already had an established career in Bulgarian and European cinema, often playing authoritative or morally complex figures. The film expanded his international visibility, making his face recognizable far beyond Eastern Europe. After 2004, Shopov continued to work consistently in film and television, appearing in historical epics, war dramas, and international productions. His career did not pivot toward Hollywood stardom, but it did solidify his reputation as an actor capable of embodying institutional power, generals, officials, and leaders whose decisions carry real consequences. One of the defining features of his career is continuity. Shopov did not reinvent himself after the Passion. He refined the same strengths that brought him to the role in the first place: control, authority, and moral ambiguity. Pilate is one of the most debated figures in Christian history, a man who recognizes injustice yet allows it to proceed. Shopov's performance avoided melodrama. His Pilate is restrained, calculating, and visibly exhausted by political pressure. This interpretation resonated strongly with modern audiences, who often see Pilate as a symbol of compromised leadership. For Shopov, the role carried historical weight rather than personal identification. He has never claimed ownership over the character, instead treating Pilate as a representation of systemic failure rather than individual cruelty. By 2026, Hristo Shopov remains an active and respected actor within European and international cinema. He continues to be cast in roles that demand authority and gravity, often portraying figures shaped by power structures and historical forces. In the long-term legacy of the Passion of the Christ, Shopov's Pilate endures as one of the film's most intellectually unsettling portrayals. In 2026, his life and career reflect the same themes embedded in that performance: responsibility without spectacle, influence without sentimentality, and the quiet weight of decisions that alter history. Claudia Gerini, Claudia Proclus in The Passion of the Christ. Claudia Proclus appears briefly, yet her presence carries symbolic weight. As the wife of Pontius Pilate, she represents conscience, warning, and moral intuition in a world driven by political calculation. That role was portrayed by Claudia Gerini, whose restrained performance left a lasting impression despite limited screen time. Claudia Gerini has long balanced public visibility with personal privacy. Born in Rome, she grew up immersed in Italian culture and cinema, and over the years has spoken about the importance of independence, self-discipline, and emotional balance. She is a mother, and family life plays a central role in how she structures her time and professional commitments. Gerini has never positioned herself as a public religious figure. Instead, she approaches spirituality and ethics in practical terms, through responsibility, empathy, and personal accountability. These values aligned naturally with the character of Claudia Proclus, who in the film is guided more by moral instinct than authority. Before appearing in The Passion of the Christ, Gerini was already a well-known actress in Italy, with a career spanning romantic comedies, dramas, and auteur-driven films. Her collaboration with prominent Italian directors established her as a versatile performer capable of both commercial and serious roles. After 2004, Gerini continued working steadily across film, television, and theater. Unlike some cast members whose careers became defined by The Passion, her trajectory remained broad. She moved fluidly between genres, appearing in Italian television series, stage productions, and films that emphasized character complexity rather than spectacle. Her career demonstrates adaptability. Rather than being tied to a single international project, she maintained relevance by evolving with the Italian entertainment industry itself. Although Claudia Proclus has limited dialogue, Gerini's performance serves a critical narrative function. She embodies the voice of warning, the human conscience Pilate cannot fully silence. Her scenes are quiet, intimate, and emotionally contained, offering contrast to the public brutality unfolding elsewhere in the film. For Gerini, this role was not about prominence, but precision. It required restraint and emotional clarity, qualities that define much of her broader body of work. By 2026, Claudia Gerini remains an active and recognizable figure in Italian cinema and cultural life. She continues to appear at major film festivals, participate in new screen projects, and engage in stage work. Her career reflects durability rather than reinvention, rooted in professionalism and sustained artistic credibility. In the context of The Passion of the Christ, Gerini's Claudia Proclus remains a subtle but essential presence. In 2026, her life mirrors that same quiet strength, measured, purposeful, and grounded in a long-term commitment to craft rather than spectacle. Rosalinda Celentano, Satan. Few performances in The Passion of the Christ are as unsettling or as enduring as the portrayal of Satan by Rosalinda Celentano. Unlike traditional depictions that rely on spectacle or overt menace, this Satan is quiet, composed, and disturbingly calm. The effect was intentional, and it continues to provoke discussion decades later. Rosalinda Celentano has always lived outside conventional celebrity frameworks. Born into a prominent artistic family, she developed an identity shaped more by creative independence than by industry expectations. In interviews over the years, she has emphasized personal freedom, introspection, and authenticity as guiding principles in her life. She has never sought to align herself publicly with religious institutions, nor has she positioned herself in opposition to them. Instead, her worldview reflects a philosophical approach to existence, focused on human nature, contradiction, and inner conflict. This perspective informed her approach to Satan not as a theatrical villain, but as a presence that tempts through familiarity rather than fear. Before and after the Passion of the Christ, Celentano pursued a career defined by selectivity. She has appeared in film, theater, and music-related projects, often choosing roles that challenge norms rather than reinforce them. Her professional trajectory favors expression over visibility, experimentation over repetition. Unlike many cast members whose careers became anchored to the film, Celentano maintained artistic distance from the Passion. She rarely revisits the role publicly, allowing the performance to stand on its own without commentary or explanation. Celentano's Satan remains one of the most unconventional portrayals in modern religious cinema. Androgynous, composed, and emotionally detached, the character resists easy interpretation. There is no shouting, no grand speeches, only quiet observation and subtle manipulation. This choice reframed how audiences understood evil within the film. Rather than external violence alone, Satan represents psychological intrusion, the erosion of resolve through doubt. Celentano's restrained performance made that concept tangible without a single explicit explanation. For many viewers, this interpretation proved more disturbing than traditional depictions. It suggested that temptation is not always loud or grotesque, but calm, persuasive, and disturbingly reasonable. By 2026, Rosalinda Celentano continues to live and work largely outside mainstream media cycles. She remains artistically active, involved in creative projects that align with her values rather than commercial demand. Public appearances are rare and intentional. Her legacy within the Passion of the Christ endures precisely because of restraint. In a film defined by physical suffering and emotional intensity, her Satan is remembered for silence. In 2026, Celentano's life reflects the same principle that shaped her most famous role. Power does not require spectacle. Sometimes, presence alone is enough. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Which actor's performance moved you the most, and why? Was it the portrayal of Jesus, Mary, Peter, Judas, or another character that stayed with you over the years? Please share your thoughts and personal reflections in the comments below. Your voice is part of this story too.